I should have listened to my oldest daughter the first night she said she saw someone standing in the upstairs hallway. Children see shapes in the dark all the time. That's what I told myself. That's what I told my wife. That's what I told her. But children also don't usually wake up with frost on their blankets. And children don't typically know things they were never told, especially the name of a woman who died in a house a century ago. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning, that first week in late December when we moved into the Victorian house on Hawthorne Street, in a quiet New England town so old the cemetery dates to the 1600s, and the trees look like they remember every winter since. We moved in 5 days before Christmas during a nor'easter that dumped nearly 2 feet of snow onto the town. The house sat on a hill overlooking the frozen river, its steep gables and black shutters half buried under drifting snow. To be honest, it was exactly the sort of place my wife had dreamed of, big, historic, with original wood floors and a broad staircase with a carved newel post shaped like a lion's head. To me, it felt off. I don't mean that in a poetic sense. I mean the house felt physically wrong, as if the colder we became outside, the colder it was inside. I blamed the drafty windows, the age, the storm. I blamed everything logical because that's the sort of father I am supposed to be. The logical one, the steady one. But even on that first night, when the movers had long gone and the kids were asleep on mattresses on the floor, I walked down the dark hallway to retrieve a dropped stuffed animal and felt an unmistakable presence behind me. Not a noise, not a shadow, a presence, someone standing too close. I turned around quickly, already planning to laugh at myself, but the hallway behind me was empty. Just the old wallpaper of faded roses and the yellow glow of the nightlight we'd plugged into the socket. And yet, I swear, the air moved as though someone had just stepped out of my way. The next morning, my oldest 9-year-old Lily came downstairs pale as the snow outside. "Daddy," she said quietly, "the lady on the stairs sang to me last night." I laughed, because what else was I supposed to do? "Oh yeah? What did she sing?" "It wasn't words," she said, "more like crying. But nice crying, sad crying." The fork froze halfway to my mouth. "How'd you see her?" I asked. "She was on the landing," Lily said matter-of-factly. "Her dress was white. You know, old-fashioned, like those pictures you showed me of great-great-grandma." My wife smiled at Lily, ruffled her hair, and told her she must have been dreaming. But I knew my daughter well. She wasn't prone to nightmares. She was grounded, observant, maybe too observant, and she'd described the landing perfectly, even though she'd been too tired the night before to explore upstairs. Still, I shrugged it away. Children see shadows. Children imagine shapes. That night, though, as the wind shook the house and snow tapped at the windows like fingernails, I heard the crying too. A low, wavering hum drifting down the staircase, rhythmic like a lullaby, but broken by the faint, tremulous sound of someone trying not to sob. I got out of bed, pulled on my robe, and walked into the hallway. "Hello?" I whispered. The hum stopped instantly. I took another step, and the entire house creaked as if something had shifted its weight. And the cold, God, the cold, rose up in a wave around me. My breath came out in a long, white plume. The thermostat said 68 degrees. The hallway felt like a walk-in freezer. I turned on every light I could find, checked every door, window, closet. Nothing. No sound. No movement. But the cold on the landing lingered even after the rest of the hallway warmed. On the third day, after the kids had gone to school and my wife was unpacking boxes downstairs, I decided to inspect the attic. The previous owner, an estate executor who barely spoke above a whisper, had said the attic hadn't been used in a while, but was perfectly safe. That should have been another warning. The attic stairs were narrow, steep, and so cold they felt almost damp. When I reached the top, I realized why. There was a small door set into the wall, half hidden behind piles of dusty trunks. A door I hadn't seen on the realtor's tour. It was no taller than 4 feet and had no knob, just a rusted keyhole. Curiosity, or stupidity, made me drag the trunks aside, and behind them, scratched into the surface of the wood, were the faint, jagged words, "Don't let her out." I froze so hard my spine felt like ice. I knelt down, ran my fingers across the carved letters. They were old, very old, deep grooves like someone had carved them in desperation. I tried to open the door, half hoping it was sealed shut. It wasn't. The door swung inward 2 inches before something inside pulled it the rest of the way open. Just darkness. A darkness so thick it seemed to swallow the light behind me. And the smell, cold dirt, wet stone, and something faintly sweet, like wilted flowers left too long on a grave. I didn't see anything inside the room, but I heard the faintest whisper, "Please." I slammed the door, hard. A gust of air pushed back against me, like a sigh of disappointment or rage. I shoved the trunks back in place and rushed downstairs, pretending everything was fine. It wasn't fine. From that day on, the house felt wrong in a more purposeful way, as if something inside it had awakened. The storm worsened over the next few days. Our driveway vanished under drifts. The plows couldn't keep up. We were effectively snowed in. The children's laughter, their games in the living room, the comfort of hot stew on cold nights. These things made the house feel normal during the day. But at night, the scratching started. At first, I thought it was just branches against the siding. Then I heard it from inside the walls, a slow, deliberate drag. Then a faster, frantic scrabble. Then silence. And always around 3 a.m. The hour when the house was pitch black and the wind rattled the window panes like teeth chattering. On the 5th night in the house, I stepped into the upstairs hallway and saw that the frost had come back. Only this time it wasn't random. The frost had formed a shape, a woman-sized silhouette on the wall across from the staircase, head bowed, shoulders hunched, hands pressed against the wallpaper as if she'd been trying to push her way out of it. I stared so long that tiny droplets of water began to run down the wall as the frost melted. Then the silhouette slowly, very slowly, tilted its head up. I ran. I didn't even pretend to be brave. I ran into our bedroom, slammed the door, locked it, and crawled back into bed shaking. My wife mumbled something about the pipes making noise. I didn't correct her. The next morning, Lily was coloring quietly at the kitchen table while snow drifted thickly outside. "Daddy," she said without looking up, "the lady says her name is Evelyn." My stomach clenched. "What lady?" I said. She drew a long, swooping line on the paper, pure white crayon on white paper. "The lady who cries on the stairs." There was no reason, none, that she should know that name. I'd seen it only once, carved faintly on a single beam in the attic when I'd first dragged aside the trunks. E. Hawthorne, 1879 to 1903. Evelyn. My voice barely worked. "What did she say to you?" "She said she doesn't want to be alone in the cold anymore." I set down my coffee. "Lily, when did she say that?" "At night," she said, "when she comes to the bottom of my bed." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What do you mean, comes to the bottom of your bed?" "She asks if she can sit there. She says her bones ache." My hand shook as I reached for her drawing. It was a child's image of our staircase, except on the landing stood a tall, thin woman in a long white dress, her hair hanging down like wet threads. Her face in the drawing was a gray, empty oval. I wanted to take that picture and burn it, but instead, I smiled weakly and told her she had a wonderful imagination. Inside, I was screaming. I didn't sleep that night. Around 3 a.m., the house groaned with the wind again. The scratching started, then stopped. Then something new happened. Footsteps. Slow, dragging footsteps crossing the upstairs hallway. I opened our bedroom door a crack. The hallway light flickered, and there, on the landing, stood the shape of a woman. Not imagined. Not made of frost. Real. Tall, impossibly thin, wearing a long dress that hung like burial cloth. Her hair was dark and wet-looking, clinging to her face. Her head turned toward me with an awful, creaking slowness. But it was her face, God help me. Her face that froze me in place. It wasn't skeletal. It wasn't rotted. It was sorrowful. Sunken gray skin stretched impossibly tight over hollow cheeks. Eyes like drowned marbles staring from deep black sockets. She looked not angry, but heartbreakingly sad. Sad enough to break something inside me. She lifted one trembling hand and beckoned. Not toward me, but toward my children's rooms. "Please," she whispered. "It's so cold." I stepped forward on instinct. "You stay away from them," I said, my voice cracking. Her face twitched, as if a muscle long unused had spasmed. Then she moved. Not walked. Glided. Fast. Too fast. I slammed my children's doors shut as the air temperature crashed around me. My breath fogged instantly. My skin went numb. Then, on the other side of the door, I heard a sound I will never forget. Fingernails. Dragging. Up and down the wood. Slowly. Lovingly. "Let me in," she whispered. "I only want to be warm." I held the doorknob with both hands until they went white and numb. Her nails scraped. Her voice drifted. And slowly, blessedly, the temperature began to rise. By dawn, she was gone, but the scratches remained. I braved the snow and walked 2 miles to the Historical Society. I told my wife I was out getting groceries. I lied. The house on Hawthorne Street, I learned, belonged to the Hawthorne family from 1868 until 1912. The last resident was Evelyn Hawthorne, age 24. She reportedly fell down the staircase on a December night and broke her neck. She died instantly, alone. Her body wasn't found for 3 days. But that wasn't the worst part. I asked the archivist, an elderly man with rimless glasses, about the attic. His expression changed. "You found the little room then?" he asked softly. I said nothing. He nodded. "That wasn't storage. It was a sick room. Evelyn was not well. She had spells. Hysteria, they called it back then. She'd wander the house at night, crying, seeing things, talking to walls. Her father locked her in that attic room more than once. A pit opened in my stomach. She died at the bottom of the stairs," I said. He sighed. "That's what they wrote in the paper, but old records say something different." "Different how?" He leaned in. "Her father said she threw herself down, but one of the servants claimed she was pushed." "By who?" He looked at me for a long moment. "She said Evelyn was terrified of something she called the Cold Woman. A ghost she swore lived in the walls. A woman who begged her to stay with her in the frost." Ice slid down my spine. I thanked him and left. I decided that night we were leaving the house. Storm or no storm, we were getting out. I packed bags in secret. I waited until the kids were asleep. I told my wife everything. And though she didn't want to believe me, the scratches on the doors convinced her. At midnight, We carried the children downstairs to the car. The wind outside howled like a living thing. As I stepped onto the porch with my youngest in my arms, the temperature plunged. My breath froze midair, and on the staircase behind us something moved, slowly, gracefully, descending one creaking step at a time. Evelyn, or what was left of her. Her white dress fluttered in a wind that hadn't reached the house. Her eyes glistened with frozen tears. Her mouth opened in a soundless, anguished cry. "Don't leave me," she whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. My youngest began to cry. My wife clutched the other two, backing toward the door. I took a step forward. "Stay away," I said, but it came out as a plea, not a command. She reached the bottom step. The air turned white with frost. Ice crept across the floorboards toward us, like fingers. "Don't leave me alone again." She reached out with a shaking hand. I swear. Her fingertips were inches from my child's cheek. I lunged, not toward her, toward the door. I threw it open so hard the frame cracked. We stumbled into the raging snow, my kids wailing, my wife screaming at me to hurry. Behind us, the doorway filled with swirling white frost. And her face twisted with grief so violent it warped her features. She screamed, not in anger, but in pure, soul-breaking sorrow. A sound I will hear until the day I die. Then the door slammed shut on its own. We never went back. I paid the bank to take the house. I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about the furniture left behind. We moved in with my sister until we found a small ranch house far, far from New England's old, haunted towns. My children still wake sometimes at night, not screaming, just shivering. They say they dream of snow falling inside the house, or of a woman standing at the end of their beds, always sad, always reaching. Lily sleeps with the light on now. She won't go near a staircase in the dark. Sometimes, when the winter wind moans across the roof, I swear I hear a faint humming behind it, a broken lullaby, a woman crying, a voice whispering, "Please, don't leave me alone in the cold." I should have known better than to walk the dog that night. Not out there, not in that forsaken place, where even the wind seemed to hesitate. But habit is a powerful thing, and my old mutt, Ranger, had been pacing by the door since sundown. He didn't understand cold advisories or wind chill warnings. He only knew routine, and I stupidly obeyed it. The cemetery lay 3 miles down an unplowed county road, surrounded by nothing but frozen fields and a copse of leafless oaks that rattled like bones in the wind. Beside it stood an old white clapboard Lutheran church, built in the 1880s. In summer, the place looked quaint enough. In January, under a moon sharp as broken glass, it felt like a borderland between the living and something else. I parked on the shoulder where the snow was less deep and stepped outside, my boots sinking nearly to the ankle. Ranger bounded ahead, tail wagging, completely unfazed by the air, so cold it stung the inside of my nose. My breath streamed out in quick bursts. The sky above was clear and merciless. "We're making this quick," I muttered, adjusting my scarf. The wrought iron cemetery gate groaned as I pushed it open, though there wasn't a breeze strong enough to move it. It felt like a warning, but I'm not the sort who listens to omens. I clipped Ranger's leash to my glove, and together we followed a path carved by previous visitors, though I hadn't seen a soul out here in days. Moonlight spilled over the headstones, making their inscriptions look like faint etchings on old ice. Ranger sniffed eagerly, weaving between the markers. I walked slower, studying the names: Skar, Lindstrom, Neuberg. Many stones were so old the dates had been softened by a century of storms. The dead beneath them had lived through winters like this without Gore-Tex or central heating. How they survived even a week of January was beyond me. The wind started then, not a howl, just a long, low exhale moving through the trees. Ranger stiffened. "What is it, boy?" He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He simply stared straight ahead. I followed his gaze. A man stood at the far end of the cemetery between two tall obelisks, hands folded neatly in front of him as though he'd been waiting. He wore a black suit, crisp and clean, with a white shirt buttoned all the way to the collar, and no coat, scarf, or gloves. No hat either. His dark hair was combed back neatly despite the wind. He should have been shivering. He should have been hugging himself or stomping his feet or doing anything a human being would do in -20 temperatures. But he stood perfectly still. At first, I thought he might be a caretaker, though none came this late, and certainly none dressed like that. When he noticed I'd seen him, he smiled politely and began walking toward us. My skin prickled. Ranger pressed closer to my leg. "Evening," the man said as he approached. His voice was warm, composed, like someone greeting a guest rather than a stranger in a graveyard. "Evening," I managed. "Cold night for a stroll." He glanced around, as though noticing the cold for the first time. "I suppose it is," he said gently, "though I don't feel it the way I once did." I forced a laugh. Wish I could say the same. He smiled again, but there was something off about it. Too still, too careful. Like someone imitating the expression rather than truly feeling it. "Lovely dog," he said. Ranger trembled at my side. "Thanks. His name's Ranger." "Ranger." The man repeated it softly, tasting the word. "Strong name. Dogs are loyal creatures. They sense far more than we do." The way he said it made the cold settle deeper into my spine. I tried to appear casual. "You live nearby? Hardly anyone comes out here in winter." He looked over toward the church steeple. "I used to, a long time ago." Something in his tone, wistful, remote, made my stomach tighten. The wind picked up, sending a whirl of powdery snow across the graves. He didn't blink as it swept over his face. "So," I said, "what brings you out tonight?" He tilted his head slightly, as though trying to recall. Restlessness, perhaps, or habit. I find myself returning here, especially this time of year. The quiet is comforting. Quiet was one word for it. The place felt drained, like sound itself had frozen. "People don't usually visit at night," I said. "Oh, I'm not visiting," he replied. Then he gave that same gentle smile. "This place is home." Before I could respond, Ranger let out a soft whine. His leash trembled. The dog was scared, really scared. I'd never seen him like that. The man crouched, extending a hand. Ranger yanked backward so violently he nearly slipped his collar. The man straightened slowly. "He knows," he said with a softness that felt like a confession. "Animals always know?" A pulse of dread went through me. I swallowed. "Know what?" "That I shouldn't still be here." My breath froze mid-exhale. "I'm sorry," he continued almost tenderly. "I didn't mean to frighten you. It's simply been so long since anyone has spoken to me. Most walk right past. Some feel me, perhaps, but never see." He took one step forward. Snow didn't crunch beneath his shoes. I instinctively stepped back. "Your name," I said quietly. "What's your name?" He pointed toward the stone beside us, one I'd walked past seconds earlier without noticing. It was tall, granite, faintly frosted, with the name Jonas Hallberg carved into it. The dates read 1889 to 1918. A century dead. My mouth went dry. "I was only 29, he said, almost apologetically. "A fever took me in the winter. My wife buried me here. She visited every Sunday until she passed." His expression softened. I liked hearing her footsteps. Wind hissed through the bare trees. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why appear to me?" He looked upward at the moon, luminous and cold. "Some nights," he said, "the boundary grows thin, and sometimes I feel called, a warmth among the living, a reminder." "A reminder of what?" His eyes, gray and distant as winter sky, settled on me. "That you still have time," he said. "Time to go home. Time to hold on to what lives. You should leave now." Ranger tugged hard, pulling me toward the gate. I didn't argue. I backed away slowly, heart hammering, never taking my eyes off him. He didn't follow. He simply watched, with that calm, mournful expression, growing fainter with each step, until the moonlight seemed to pass right through him. By the time I reached the gate, he was gone. Completely. No footprints in the snow, no sign he'd ever been there. As Ranger and I hurried back to the truck, I glanced once over my shoulder. The cemetery was silent, white, undisturbed. But at the far end, just for a moment, I saw the faint outline of a man standing between two obelisks, watching. Then the wind shifted, and he was gone again. I didn't take Ranger back there for weeks. Even now, when winter comes and the nights grow long, I think of Jonas Hallberg standing over his own grave, waiting for warmth he can never feel again. And I remember his warning, whispered through frozen air. "You still have time." I've always liked winter roads. There's a kind of peace to them when the snow falls hard enough that the world seems to hold its breath. Trees blur into white silhouettes, sound becomes muffled, and the sky hangs low like a heavy gray blanket. I've found comfort in that quiet since I was a kid, riding shotgun while my own father took us up to cabins on frigid December weekends. So I thought taking my 8-year-old son, Owen, on a pre-holiday weekend trip to a rented cabin in the Maine mountains would be a sort of rite of passage. Just him and me. 2 days of sledding, snowshoeing, hot cocoa, and the kind of quiet that city life never gives you. I didn't expect the quiet to take on a life of its own. I didn't expect it to look back at us with pale eyes from the side of a lonely road. But I should start at the beginning, before the storm hit its peak, before the cemetery, before the woman in white walked out of the snowfall like something the modern world had forgotten. Owen was unusually quiet that afternoon as we drove our old Toyota Land Cruiser up Route 11 toward the cabin. Normally, he fills long drives with questions. Why do snowflakes melt on the windshield? How many trees are in Maine? What happens if we get stuck in the snow? Can bears smell through car doors? Today, though, he just watched the snow through the window, chin resting on his mittened fist. "Good back there, bud?" I asked. He nodded, just cold and sleepy. "It'll be worth it," I said. "This cabin is right near a frozen lake. We can skate, and I brought the sled." "Will it be spooky?" he asked suddenly. "Spooky? Why would it be spooky?" He shrugged. "Sometimes quiet places feel spooky." I laughed, but the sound felt too loud for the interior of the car. The snow had picked up so quickly that I'd pulled us into four-wheel drive 20 minutes earlier. The sky was darkening fast. Shadows swallowed the edges of the road. The mountains around us rose like great white beasts. "Nothing spooky," I promised. "Just us and the snow." I should have known that promises like that don't mean much in old places, in places where the dead lie close to the living. The cemetery appeared out of nowhere, a cluster of leaning stones half buried beneath drifts, surrounded by tall pines that groaned and swayed in the wind. It sat just off the road, maybe 30 yards into the trees. Old cemeteries have a look. There's no mistaking them. The stones are thinner. The names are worn by more winters than you can count. and the silence around them feels deeper, as though the forest is protecting them or warning you away. When the shape of the first headstone passed through the haze, I slowed. Then I stopped. "Why are we stopping?" Owen asked, sitting up straight. I squinted through the windshield. The snow fell so thick it looked like static on an old TV screen. "That cemetery," I said. "I've never seen one out here. Must be really old." So? I opened the door, and cold wind slapped my face. "We've got time. Want to check it out?" Owen hesitated, but unbuckled. "I guess." We stepped out into the whipping storm. The snow came sideways, stinging our cheeks. The wind howled through the pines overhead, sounding eerily like a distant moan. Our boots crunched heavily as we trudged toward the cemetery fence. Just a simple iron rail, rusted almost black. Through the blowing flakes, I saw the stones more clearly now. A small plot, maybe a dozen graves. No path, no sign, no road leading to it. "How long do you think they've been here?" Owen asked. "Long enough that trees grew around them," I said. We stepped inside the little burial ground. The names on the nearest stones looked mid-1800s, some older, some so weather-worn they were nothing but smooth, ghostly slabs. "Dad," Owen said, voice small. "Yeah? Why would anyone be buried out here?" I started to answer, but that's when I saw her. She was walking down the middle of the road behind our Land Cruiser. At first, I thought it was just the drifting snow playing tricks. But then, the figure took shape. A small, hunched woman, moving slowly through the gale. Her coat, if that's what it was, looked white or maybe gray. Hard to tell through the storm. Her head was bowed against the wind. There was no car, no tracks, no houses for miles. Just her, walking alone. "Owen," I said softly, "get behind me." He did. "Who is that?" he whispered. "I don't know. Maybe someone stranded." But that didn't make sense. It was the kind of weather that kills people if they're out for more than a few minutes. And the nearest town was nearly 40 miles away. Still, she was headed right toward us, slow and steady, as though the storm meant nothing to her. I lifted a hand over the cemetery fence and shouted, "Ma'am? Hey, are you all right?" The wind swallowed my words. She kept walking. Her steps were strange, too smooth, not lifting, not sinking into the snow, almost gliding. A prickling unease crawled up my spine. I called out louder, "Ma'am, do you need help?" Nothing. Didn't turn her head, didn't slow, didn't acknowledge us. "Dad," Owen said, voice tight, "I don't think she hears you." "I don't think she does either," I murmured. Something in me, a father's instinct, or maybe just human decency, made me move toward her. As I left the boundary of the cemetery, the air temperature seemed to drop sharply, biting through my coat like needles. "You wait here," I told Owen. "No," he said immediately. "Owen, I mean it." He stopped at the fence, gripping one of the cold iron bars. I walked toward the woman. The snow swirled wildly around her, but she didn't seem bothered by it. She moved at a smooth, unnatural pace, eyes downcast, expression unreadable. I tried again. "Ma'am, you shouldn't be out here. There's a storm coming in." Then, when I got within 10 feet of her, I froze. It wasn't the storm obscuring her shape. I could see through her. The shape of the Land Cruiser wavered faintly through her body. The snowflakes passed not around her, but through her. My breath stopped in my throat. "Dad!" Owen yelled, voice shaking. "What is she?" The woman lifted her head, and for the first time she looked directly at me. Her eyes were the color of old milk, pale, cloudy, lacking depth. Her skin looked thin as parchment, stretched tight over delicate bones. But the worst part, the part that froze me in place, was her expression. Not angry, not monstrous, just breathtakingly sad, as though winter itself lived inside her. She studied me for a long moment, snow gathering in her wispy hair, her thin shoulders, her long trembling fingers. Then, slowly, she lifted one arm and pointed, not at me, at Owen, or more specifically, at the tombstone standing behind him inside the cemetery. I turned. Snow blasted my face. Owen stood there, small and scared, the wind tugging at his coat. Behind him was a stone I hadn't noticed earlier, a newer one than the others, yet still old. The name carved into it read, Clara Hockley, 1842 to 1879. Beloved mother, she loved the snow. My heart thudded painfully. I turned back to the woman, but she was already speaking. Her voice was thin, airy, like breath on an icy window. I just went for a stroll, she said. I love the snow. Her eyes drifted toward her own grave behind Owen. I'll be going back to bed now. Then she blinked. Once. And she was gone. Just gone. Gone like a candle snuffed. Gone like she had never been there at all. The wind screamed through the trees, filling the void where she had stood. Owen's voice broke the silence first. Dad, can we go, please? Yes, I said, grabbing his shoulder. Come on. We hurried back to the car, stumbling through the drifts. Owen kept looking behind him, as though expecting the woman to return. I kept glancing behind me, too. When we reached the Land Cruiser, I slammed the door shut so hard the windows rattled. Owen climbed into the front seat and buckled himself without being told. Neither of us spoke as I turned the ignition. The heater blasted warm air at us, but I still felt cold, bone-deep cold that had nothing to do with the storm outside. I put the car in drive and eased back onto the snowy pavement. After a long minute, Owen whispered, She wasn't alive, was she? I thought about lying. I really did. But Owen wasn't stupid. He'd seen her. He'd seen through her. No, I said quietly. I don't think she was. Was she a ghost? The word felt childish and heavy all at once. I think so. We drove in silence for several minutes, snow pelting the windshield like handfuls of gravel. Owen finally spoke again. Do you think she saw her own grave? I think she did. And she didn't know she was dead? I don't know. More silence. Dad. Yeah, Bud. Why did she look so sad? I swallowed. I think some people don't know how to let go, I said, even when they're supposed to. We didn't talk after that, not until we reached the cabin, not even as we unpacked, lit the stove, and made hot chocolate. But both of us jumped every time the wind knocked against the door, and neither of us mentioned the cemetery, or Clara Hockley, or the way she said she loved the snow. The storm worsened by nightfall. Wind rattled the shutters, snow hammered the roof. The windows howled like something clawing to get inside. Owen slept in the lower bunk. I slept on the small bed opposite the fireplace. I dozed off sometime around midnight, but I woke slowly, strangely, to a soft noise. Not quite knocking, not quite scratching. More like a hand brushing snow from a window pane. I sat up. The cabin was dark except for the dying glow of the fire. The wind outside was still violent, but beneath it, so faint I thought I imagined it, I heard something else. A woman's voice, humming, a simple tune, sad, lonely, carried on the wind like a ghost of a lullaby. My skin prickled. I got up quietly and walked to the front window. The glass was fogged with cold. I wiped it with my sleeve. Snow swirled outside in a dizzying white curtain, but through it, just barely, I saw a figure, small, gray, moving slowly along the tree line. Her head was bowed. Her hair blew in thin strands behind her. She was heading away from us, back toward the mountains, back toward the cemetery, back toward her grave. "I'll be going back to bed now," she had said, and I realized she meant it. Her bed wasn't a cabin or a home. It was the cold ground beneath the snow, where she had been sleeping for more than a century. I stood there watching until the figure disappeared completely, until the forest swallowed her up, until the snow erased every sign she had ever walked there. When I woke, sunlight glowed weakly through the cabin windows. Owen was already up, sitting at the table, drawing in the little notebook he'd brought. I poured coffee and sat across from him. "What are you working on?" I asked. He flipped the notebook around. It was the cemetery, perfectly sketched from memory, snow falling, pine trees bowing in the wind. In the foreground was a woman in a white coat, walking away from us. "Do you think she rests now?" he asked softly. I looked at the drawing, at the quiet forest outside, at the distant mountains. "I think she does," I said. "Good," he whispered. We didn't talk about her again. But on the drive home 2 days later, as we passed the same bend in the road where the cemetery lay, Owen looked toward it through the window. "Dad," he said, "do you think she liked that we saw her?" I thought about the way she pointed, the way she spoke, the way she vanished the moment she recognized her own grave. "I think," I said slowly, "some ghosts just want to be remembered." Owen nodded, and as the cemetery disappeared behind the trees, swallowed once more by drifting snow, I swear, for a moment, I saw a thin figure standing among the stones, watching us leave, watching us remember. Then the snow closed in again, and she was gone.